Infrastructure has gone from this place of acute boredom to really fun and exciting. And it's happened because there have been, on one hand, a bunch of inflections in business drivers, whether that's e-everything, mobility, just the emergence of big data. And on the other side is this opportunity to get to do your infrastructure again from scratch. Because we've seen all of these large-scale internet companies basically show the path that you can do computing differently.
Google built a data center that was bigger than anybody's data center in history. And when they set out to build that data center, they realized none of the existing technologies would work for them. So they built everything from scratch. And once they did, everybody said, wow, you can do that.
And this reinvention of infrastructure is clearly started with computing and virtualization. That's been the lead. But as people have built out virtualized computing infrastructure, they find, well, my network isn't up to scratch. It's not virtualized. So that's the next wave. And storage is right behind that. And it is any of these systems that really require the balance of all three. It's the computing, it's the networking, and the storage, and all of those have to come together.
The whole field of enterprise computing is wide open for the first time in a long time, at least 2 decades. And we've invested in a whole raft of companies that are taking advantage of that.
One thing that is fascinating to me about this time is when people are looking at where should I go for new infrastructure, and that can be computing, networking, or storage, it's not the traditional players, that the giants of the industry, sort of the IBMs and Ciscos of the world, are not the ones that are top of mind.
Cisco and other existing vendors will like to talk about how they win market transitions. Incumbents are supposed to win market transitions. The customers demand that you win the market transitions. But transformations, they never win, right?
Nicira is one of these clean slate type of companies, which is, what if we could redesign networking? What would we do?
We've learned that the operational model of virtualization is required for cloud to really happen, that business velocity and efficiency of the cloud. We've seen it in storage, we've seen it in compute, and now we're going to see it in networking, and that's the problem that Nicira is going to solve. I think software has a lot of value, and when you can decouple software from the hardware and completely independent, you get that velocity and efficiency that people are really looking for. So the rate of innovation in a software-based solution versus a hardware-based solution is orders of magnitude. And I think that's what's going to be the real innovation here, and the real benefit to the customers is this cycle time at which you can deliver new services when things are defined in software versus ASICs goes from years to weeks.
Well, we're clearly in this reinvention of what infrastructure looks like. I liken it to now seriously building power plants, where to date we've been sort of stacking up a bunch of portable generators.
I ran engineering at VMware for over 7 years. And what I saw was that customers were getting a lot of benefit from virtualization on the server side. So they were saving money and they were getting a lot of flexibility, but they weren't seeing the same thing on storage. So what they were spending more on storage. It's complex. There were performance issues associated with it. And they weren't happy, or they aren't happy with their storage. The major thing that you get with existing technologies is they're unbelievably complex to manage. So you'll have specialized people that are actually managing this infrastructure. Takes a long time to configure, takes a long time to install. What we've done is produce storage for virtualized and cloud environments that's simple, intelligent, and fast.
The growth of cloud has really challenged some of the traditional infrastructure that enterprises have used. A lot of technologies that have been built over the last 10 or 15 years for traditional enterprise workloads really just aren't the right technologies for particularly large-scale cloud environments like SolidFire is focused on. The service provider space is extremely important because there's a huge shift underway in how IT is being purchased. Companies, particularly small businesses and mid-sized companies, are moving away from purchasing and deploying their own infrastructure. They're much more interested in a model where they can rent and buy infrastructure on demand on a month-to-month basis through large cloud providers.
We're in this stage of, I call it, brutal efficiency in infrastructure. And a lot of the classic companies are really not built with the business models to respond in that way. And with startups and technology-centered plays, you really have an opportunity to sort of shape your business model along where the real consumption wants to be.
Down the road, we really see this seismic shift that's occurring in enterprise IT playing very well into the model that SolidFire has built. Building a storage system that's designed for large computing is really ideal in a world where computing is done at larger and larger scales. And that is really the world that we see IT moving to, both in the enterprise as well as the public cloud.
So everybody knows the public cloud and Amazon Web Services specifically, and you can have any application run outside on the cloud. But some people need to run those same applications inside their firewall, within the protection of their own firewall. And for that, they need a private cloud software platform. And that's what Eucalyptus is.
The enterprises are really just getting going. They mostly have their computing behind their own firewall in their own data centers today. But what is clearly happening is they're experimenting. They're putting some of their stuff out in the cloud. And what they're going to want to do over time is they're going to be able to move things from the cloud back to their own data center, maybe when it becomes a more mature process. The ability to move back and forth, which is something Eucalyptus focuses on, I think will be increasingly important.
In essence, you could say that we are making the applications free to go wherever they need to go, to be deployed wherever they need to be deployed, on-premise or on a public cloud. And we relieve the application developers from a lot of the complexities that you find on the hardware layer.
Well, I think the cloud is getting plenty of hype, but I think 10 years hence we'll actually think it wasn't getting as much as it deserved, because I think we're at the beginning of a shift, a wholesale shift from computing inside of enterprise data centers to largely outside of enterprise data centers.
One of the things that we've found is that companies are often reluctant to move to the cloud because they don't want to necessarily give up control of their data. What Cloudflare does is we allow companies to move to the cloud at their own pace, and we take over the performance and security aspects, but let you host your data wherever you want it to be.
I've never seen a company like Cloudflare before. I've been a part of some amazingly successful companies, but I've never seen something happen quite so fast and so dramatically as Cloudflare.
Traditionally, when you think of cloud computing, you think of something like Amazon Web Services or Rackspace's cloud, and these are general purpose solutions that are sort of one size fits all. They do a lot, and they're great, and we work with all of them. But what Cloudflare has done is we've taken a narrow piece of that, the performance and security piece, and we've said, in front of any different cloud solution, in front of any different hosted solution, we'll make sure that your service, your website, can be faster and more secure.
Most people have still never heard of this company, but today almost 25% of global internet traffic goes through their servers. And when it goes through their servers, it gets accelerated about 50%.
So, it seems like it's something that's really ambitious, but what Cloudflare aims to do and what our target customer is literally anyone with a website, and we're literally trying to rebuild the internet.
One of the great things about NEA in the position of looking at enterprise infrastructure, there's a great history of investments in that area and networks of companies and clearly expertise in the firm. But also there's a lot that's going on in consumer web. And there's a big intersection between the two because it's the patterns from the consumer space which are informing what you think enterprise infrastructure ought to look like. And I don't think you can do either one of those, right, without the other.
I think at NEA we're in a fantastic position for enterprise computing in the cloud because we have such a long heritage in all the areas that matter. So we have this legacy which creates a network of people who naturally come back to us when there's a new wave of innovation, and that's what's happening now. In addition to that, people who don't know us come because of the success we've had in the past. And fortunately, because we continued to invest in the last decade when the bubble burst, we have actually been a part of some of the more recent success stories like Salesforce.com and Data Domain, which are precursors to some of the things that are happening now. So all of that lineage ties itself very well to what's happening today, and I think it's the reason we've been able to assemble what may be the best portfolio of companies in this area.